The radio crackled with desperation as gunfire echoed across the Afghan mountainside. "We need a sniper! Now!" But the only person within 50 miles who could make that impossible 800-meter shot in howling wind wasn't who anyone expected. She was the quiet Navy nurse who'd been serving coffee and bandaging wounds for months. The same woman her fellow Marines called just the medic. But when 200 lives hung in the balance, Lieutenant Sarah Chen would prove that some heroes hide in plain sight and that the deadliest weapon isn't always the rifle, it's the person behind it. The morning sun cast long shadows across Forward Operating Base Whiskey as Lieutenant Sarah Chen made her rounds through the medical tent. To everyone watching, she was just another Navy nurse going through the motions, checking supplies, updating patient charts, preparing for another day of treating everything from heat exhaustion to shrapnel wounds. The Marines called her Doc with respect, but she could hear the unspoken words in their voices. Just the medic, just the nurse, just support personnel. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez limped in with a twisted ankle from the morning patrol, and Sarah worked with practiced efficiency, wrapping the joint while he complained about the rocky terrain. "Thanks, Doc," he said, testing his weight on the foot. "Don't know what we'd do without you patching us up." It was genuine gratitude, but Sarah had heard variations of this sentiment hundreds of times. She was the person who fixed them when they broke, nothing more. What none of them knew was that before Sarah Chen became a nurse, she had been something else entirely. The small scar above her left eyebrow, barely visible unless you knew to look for it, told a different story. It was a souvenir from her time at Scout Sniper School, earned during the grueling training that fewer than 10% of candidates complete. The calluses on her trigger finger had long since faded, replaced by the gentler marks of someone who saved lives instead of taking them. As she organized medical supplies in the storage area, her movements carried a precision that seemed excessive for simple inventory management. Every item had its place, every angle calculated for maximum efficiency. Old habits died hard, and muscle memory from years of military discipline never truly faded. She checked her watch. 0800 hours. Another routine day in paradise, as the Marines liked to joke about their dusty slice of Afghanistan. The transition from Marine sniper to Navy nurse hadn't been a career change anyone saw coming, least of all Sarah herself. 3 years earlier, she had been Lance Corporal Chen, one of the most promising marksmen in her unit. Her instructors at Quantico had called her a natural, someone who could read wind patterns like poetry and calculate bullet drop in her sleep. She could hit targets at distances that made seasoned veterans shake their heads in disbelief. But everything changed during a classified mission in Syria. Sarah had been positioned on Overwatch, providing cover for a humanitarian convoy delivering medical supplies to a bombed-out hospital. Through her scope, she watched Navy corpsmen and doctors work frantically to save civilian casualties, including children caught in the crossfire of someone else's war. In that moment, watching healers risk their lives to preserve life while she was trained to take it, something fundamental shifted inside her. The mission was successful, her team completed their objectives without casualties, and the medical supplies reached their destination. But Sarah couldn't shake the image of those doctors and nurses covered in dust and blood, refusing to give up on patients that others might have written off. When her enlistment ended, she made a desist, and that surprised everyone who knew her. She applied to nursing school, determined to learn how to save lives with the same precision she had once used to end them. The transition wasn't easy. Medical school demanded a different kind of discipline, one focused on healing rather than tactical superiority. But Sarah discovered that many of the skills that made her an exceptional sniper translated surprisingly well to nursing. The ability to remain calm under pressure, to make split-second decisions when lives hung in the balance, to see details that others missed. These qualities served her well in emergency rooms and trauma centers. She graduated at the top of her class and immediately requested deployment to forward operating bases, wanting to serve where she was needed most. The briefing tent buzzed with unusual activity as intelligence reports filtered in throughout the afternoon. Captain Morrison, the base commander, studied satellite imagery with a furrowed brow, while communications specialists decoded intercepted enemy transmissions. Sarah continued her medical duties, but her trained ear caught fragments of conversation that painted an increasingly concerning picture. "Multiple enemy positions confirmed in the northern ridgeline," reported Lieutenant Hayes from the intelligence section. "Looks like they're coordinating something big." The photographs spread across the briefing table showed insurgent movement patterns that Sarah recognized from her previous life. These weren't random attacks or opportunistic raids. Someone was planning a coordinated assault on multiple coalition positions. Word spread quickly through the base that nearby outposts were reporting increased reconnaissance activity. Drone footage revealed enemy fighters moving equipment into positions overlooking key supply routes. Captain Morrison called for enhanced security protocols and requested additional air support, but the nearest Apache helicopters were grounded for maintenance, and fixed-wing aircraft were committed to operations further south. As evening approached, Sarah found herself checking and rechecking medical supplies, preparing for casualties that might be coming sooner than anyone wanted to acknowledge. She organized trauma kits with the methodical precision of someone who understood that when violence erupted, there would be no time for hesitation. The other medical personnel noticed her intensity but attributed it to the general tension spreading throughout the base. Radio chatter increased as patrols reported contact with enemy scouts. The sound of distant explosions echoed across the valley, too far away to threaten the base directly, but close enough to remind everyone that they were operating in hostile territory. Sarah stepped outside the medical tent and studied the surrounding mountains with eyes that automatically calculated ranges, wind speed, and potential firing positions. Old instincts never truly disappeared, and tonight, those instincts were telling her that something was very wrong. The attack began at 03:47 hours with a coordinated mortar barrage that lit up the pre-dawn darkness like deadly fireworks. Captain Morrison's worst fears materialized as radio reports flooded in from 3 separate outposts simultaneously under assault. Bravo Company, positioned 15 kilometers north in a strategic valley pass, found themselves surrounded by insurgent forces using the high ground to devastating effect. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Bravo 6. The radio transmission crackled with desperation and the background noise of intense gunfire. "We are taking heavy casualties and need immediate sniper support. Enemy marksmen have us pinned down from multiple positions at approximately 800 meters. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, his ankle forgotten, grabbed the radio and began coordinating rescue efforts while Captain Morrison assessed their limited options. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Apache helicopters remained grounded with mechanical issues, and the sandstorm approaching from the west made close air support impossible. Worse yet, the base's designated marksman was recovering from surgery after an IED incident 2 days earlier. 200 Marines were trapped in a killing field with enemy snipers picking them off one by one, and there was no one qualified to engage targets at the necessary distance. Sarah listened to the radio chatter while preparing medical supplies for the inevitable medevac casualties. Her hands moved automatically, organizing trauma equipment while her mind processed the tactical situation with crystal clarity. 800 meters, crosswinds, elevated positions. She knew those challenges intimately. Through the medical tent's open flap, she could see officers frantically discussing options that didn't exist. "We need someone who can make those shots," Captain Morrison said, his voice tight with frustration. "Without sniper support, we're going to lose them all." Sarah's hands stilled on the medical supplies. She looked at her reflection in the metal cabinet door, the quiet Navy nurse everyone took for granted. But underneath that reflection lived someone else, someone who had never missed when it mattered most. Sarah walked into the command tent without invitation, her voice cutting through the chaos with unexpected authority. "Sir, I can make those shots." The room fell silent except for the continued radio reports of Marines under fire. Captain Morrison looked at her as if she had spoken in a foreign language. "Doc, this isn't the time for—" "I'm a qualified Marine Scout sniper, sir," she interrupted, her tone carrying a steel that none of them had heard before. "I can engage targets at 800 meters in these conditions." The transformation was immediate and unmistakable. Gone was the soft-spoken nurse who had bandaged their wounds and served their coffee. Standing before them was a warrior who radiated competence and lethal capability. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez stared at her with new recognition. "Jesus, Doc, why didn't you ever tell us?" But there was no time for explanations. Sarah was already moving toward the weapons locker, her movements efficient and purposeful. Captain Morrison made a decision that went against every conventional wisdom about medical personnel and combat roles. "Do it," he said simply. Within minutes, Sarah had selected an M24 sniper weapon system and was checking the rifle's zero while calculating atmospheric conditions. The muscle memory returned instantly. The familiar weight of the weapon, the precise adjustment of the scope, the way her breathing automatically regulated for optimal accuracy. She positioned herself on the base's highest observation point, a sandbagged position that offered clear lines of sight to the embattled valley. Through her scope, she could see muzzle flashes from enemy positions that had been invisible to conventional infantry weapons. The distance was challenging, but not impossible. Wind speed was 12 knots from the northwest, temperature was dropping, and she had to account for the slight upward angle to the target area. Bravo 6, this is Overwatch. Sarah's voice came across the radio with calm professionalism. I have eyes on multiple enemy positions. Stand by for suppressive fire. The Marines in the valley couldn't see her, didn't know who was speaking, but they recognized the voice of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Sarah settled into her shooting position, her world narrowing to the precise moment when breath control, trigger squeeze, and environmental calculation would converge into perfect accuracy. The first shot rang out across the valley at 412 hours, and an enemy sniper who had been terrorizing Bravo Company simply ceased to exist. Sarah worked the bolt action smoothly, already acquiring her next target before the first had even fallen. 820 meters to the second position, slight adjustment for wind drift, controlled breath, squeeze. Another enemy marksman eliminated. For the next 47 minutes, Sarah Chen became death itself, methodically neutralizing enemy positions with shots that defied belief. Each bullet found its mark with surgical precision, turning a desperate last stand into a tactical victory. The Marines in the valley began advancing, using the suppression fire to break out of their trap and establish superior fighting positions. "Who the hell is that shooting?" came confused voices over the radio. "Whoever you are, you just saved our asses." Sarah continued working, her focus absolute, eliminating threats with the same calm professionalism she brought to treating patients. 17 confirmed kills at distances ranging from 600 to 900 meters, each shot a masterpiece of marksmanship under combat conditions. When the last enemy position fell silent and Bravo Company reported all clear, Sarah carefully safed her weapon and began the methodical process of cleaning and storing the rifle. Captain Morrison appeared at her position, staring at her with something approaching awe. "Chen," he said quietly, "that was the finest display of marksmanship I've ever witnessed." But Sarah was already thinking about the wounded Marines who would need medical attention. The base would never be the same after that morning. Word spread quickly about the quiet Navy nurse who had single-handedly turned a massacre into a victory. Marines who had previously seen her as just the medic now understood they had been serving alongside a legend. But Sarah continued her medical duties with the same dedication as always, treating the wounded with gentle hands that had just delivered precise death to those who threatened her brothers and sisters in arms. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, now walking without his limp thanks to her earlier treatment, found her restocking medical supplies later that day. "Doc," he said, using the title with new respect, "thank you doesn't seem like enough." Sarah looked up from her inventory sheets and smiled the same quiet smile she always had. "Just doing my job, Sergeant. Same as always." But they both knew that nothing would ever be the same. Lieutenant Sarah Chen's story reminds us that heroes come in many forms, and sometimes the most extraordinary warriors hide behind the most ordinary facades. In a world where military personnel are often defined by their job titles or specialties, Sarah proved that service members carry within them depths of capability, courage, and dedication that extend far beyond their assigned roles. The men and women who serve our nation possess skills, experiences, and stories that would astound us if we took the time to truly see them. Behind every quiet professional serving in uniform lies a lifetime of training, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to something greater than themselves. Sarah's transformation from overlooked nurse to battlefield legend happened in moments, but it was built on years of dedication to excellence in every role she undertook. Today, veterans and active duty service members continue to serve with the same quiet professionalism that Sarah embodied. They are the nurses who save lives, the mechanics who keep aircraft flying, the communications specialists who maintain vital connections, and yes, the warriors who stand ready to defend freedom when called upon. Each carries within them the potential for extraordinary heroism, waiting for the moment when their nation needs them to step forward. Their stories deserve to be told, their service deserves recognition, and their sacrifices deserve our respect and gratitude. These are the real heroes among us, not seeking glory or recognition, but serving with honor, courage, and commitment every single day. If Lieutenant Sarah Chen's story moved you, if it opened your eyes to the hidden depths of those who serve, then please subscribe to our channel for more stories that honor the real heroes walking among us. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that extraordinary courage often wears ordinary uniforms. And if you've served or know someone who has, take a moment to say thank you, because behind every quiet professional is a story of service that deserves our recognition and respect. Hit that notification bell to be the first to hear more inspiring stories of military service, hidden heroism, and the men and women who answer the call when freedom needs defending. Until next time, remember that heroes are all around us. Sometimes we just need to learn how to see them.